Listen, lots of changes. I assume, is it right to assume that's kind of obviously with the matches in mind coming up? And also, is it a chance for some of these players to play their way into your first team?
Yeah, like there's a combination of factors. Like what exactly is right or wrong, I'm not sure. Like it's such a big block of games that we have. Well, certainly we hope it's a big block of games coming up. We wanted to use these first 2 rounds to get through with a good chunk of players. I think that's important. And the guys have trained hard. There's lots of them are deserving an opportunity as well. So like we sort of took the view of we've used 15 guys to start, 15 guys, 15 changes for this week. See how those guys perform, and we can make some assessments. Plus, it builds a bit of depth. Like if we're serious about wanting to compete on 2 fronts, like it's something like we talked about all the time. We need guys to be able to step in if required. So it's an important part of it. Like it's a challenge with the way the thing is set up. Like you're trying to finish the season. Thankfully, we're in a position where we have qualified, so we've ticked that piece off. But we still need to get guys game ready after such a long break. And so you're making those calls, and like other people may do it slightly differently. This is obviously the way we've tried to go about things. But overall, like it's a great opportunity for a number of guys to put their hand up. And if you think next week there's a semi-final, if you lose the semi-final at Pro14, granted you have a week off that you don't want off. So the plan will be to put in performance good enough to win and get you through a semi-final to a final. And we know we've got the Saracens quarter-final the week after that. And again, depending on how you progress there, you've potentially a semi-final, and then you're to the start of the season. So it's coming thick and fast. So but the only thing that changes that if you don't win on the day. So it's just about a little bit about squad management. But also the most important bit is giving guys opportunity that they can put their hand up and perform. And if they perform well enough, then we'll pick the guys that are playing well.
Listen, Rob Kearney comes back into the team. Obviously, we know his contract situation. It could be possibly, some are saying, maybe his last appearance for Leinster. Have you been talking to him, and what's his mindset of kind of going into this kind of final stretch of his possible Leinster career?
Well, I think all of this, there's a little bit of nervousness with everybody because it's slightly unusual, even like the playing with no crowds, getting back after such a long break for everybody. And I think everybody is going through that sensation and the different anxieties that come with that. With Rob specifically, he's just excited. It is what it is for him now. He wants to enjoy his time and wants to go out and play well and put his hand up. And, I think he sort of feels like he's like the young player coming through in many ways because, I think it's important for him just to get excited about the particularly the back 3 guys he's there with, Hugh Keenan on the wing and Cian Kelleher as well. And, Dave got injured last week. I think everyone knows that there's places up for grabs as well, which is a plenty of card for them all. But they know, like if they go well, they're in with a mix now, or in with a shout of getting selected for the big games, the real knockout games that all the players want to be part of.
And Rhys Ruddock, where is he on kind of his recovery? He's back on the bench.
Yeah, so like there was a couple of guys kind of managing niggles, Tyke Furlong being another one. So and then Rhys. So we're just making some calls on some of those guys. Rhys got through a bit more training towards the end of the week, so he's back on the bench after missing out last week. He had a flare up last week, so similar to Tyke, a little bit too soon for him. Dan Levy, obviously another one who's been out for a much longer period. So we're just taking a slightly longer term view with some of those guys. There's a little bit of risk reward in some of those calls. So those 3 in particular, Fergus McFadden, at least he's back running now. Weren't sure exactly the extent of that was going to be, but he's back running now from that calf injury that he had. So hopefully he won't be a million miles away. But as you know, like the window's getting tight quite quickly. Dave Kearney obviously picked up that hamstring injury at the weekend. Probably not quite as bad as we had first feared. So you're talking a few weeks. Exactly how long, I'm not 100% sure. But again, hopefully he's not a million miles away. So it's just about making some decisions for, I suppose, for the individuals, but also for the collective as well.
And listen, as we kind of head into the business stage of the season, obviously no silverware decided yet. But obviously with the record of this side so far this season and the way they've kind of blown teams away from time to time and obviously being unbeaten, where would you rank this team, this squad of players, in terms of all the teams that you've played with and coached?
That's our question. It feels like we're still in a little bit of last week there were so many parts of the performance that need addressing. But, that's what it's like when you play a preseason game. Well, normally you play a preseason game without as many prying eyes watching. Obviously, there wasn't anyone at the ground itself, but there's lots of people with a great interest in the game, which is obviously fantastic. And lots of positive reports about the game. I thought it was two sets of players after such a long break putting in fairly full-on performances, which is great. I think if you're a neutral, or obviously if you've got bit of vested interest in either team as well, because it was right on went down to the wire at the end. Obviously we have a couple of big defensive sets when the score is 27-25. So I don't know, it's not something I've given a huge amount of thought to tell you the truth. We'll see. It's such an exciting block, but it's so unusual in many ways, because there's part of it that feels like the start of the season, but the reality is we're at the end of the season and we're into very, very serious games. So it's interesting to see what some of the other teams do in terms of what are they doing, rotating their group versus trying to build that bit of cohesion. So it's just trying to get that balance, really. So some of the guys that would have played, say, against Munster for us last week, a lot of them would have trained today. So at least they're able to, keep ticking along, I guess the best way to describe it, and keeps them a little bit fresh for the start of next week. But again, it's a fine balance between getting minutes into guys plus keeping them fresh as well. So it's very, very hard to nail all the boxes, but we're doing our best.
Leo, just in terms of some of the guys that came off last week, the likes of Keane and Josh and Johnny with their respective injuries, how was their workload like this week, and sort of how close were they, and close enough then to make them to the next week, hopefully, if you get one?
Yeah, they were all okay this week, yeah, so they could all have been involved in the game. So we were just keener to, it's not so much, it's building depth and options for the period, because with huge games, you're never too sure when someone is going to potentially drop out. So it has to be the focus of next man is ready to step in. And we need to have and build the confidence in the group as well that players have done the job before for us and are able to do it in really, really big games. And hopefully, as I said, we have big games coming up. We know we've two. We'd love to be involved in a few more, but we'll focus on the two that we are certainly involved in for now.
What was your view on Ulster last weekend, Leo?
Bit slow at the blocks, I think. I think Dan probably summed it up himself afterwards. A little bit loose in terms of their carry, which gave Connacht a lot of access into the game. Lost a couple of lineouts, probably similar to ourselves. So you struggle to build a platform in the game as well, which is in many ways to be a certain way expected. As I said, it's in many ways it's a pre-season game, but it's a full-on pre-season game. So, so I'm sure they will be expecting a big reaction from them this week. Obviously, losing a game that they thought they were going to win against Connacht. But from a performance point of view, I think they'll be a lot more confrontational, direct, and focus on securing the ball.
Almost like they sort of have a point to prove. Sort of what then does that the difficulties that poses for your side in terms of the preparation for that?
Ulster, there's a lot of guys up there that have come through the Leinster system here, so there's a good chunk of guys that have a fair understanding of what goes on here. So that always poses some challenges for a team. So we've a good chunk of ex-Leinster players up in Belfast at the moment, and a lot of them are going well individually. So there'll be a handful of Ulster. And it's a well-coached team. We have a lot of respect for what they do up there. In terms of Dwayne Peel, his attack, and Jared Payne from a defensive point of view. And they're a well-organised team, and some got some very good individuals as well. So I think it's a very good test for our guys in terms of the selection they've made. A lot of guys are doubling up now, so they have the advantage of obviously having played a game as well. So they're able to build on last week's performance, whether that's good or bad. At least they've been out there, played, experienced the environment, whereas some of our guys will be doing that for the first time. So but it's going to be a great test for our guys, and that's what we want. We want proper tests that set us up well for the big block of games that we have coming up. And again, I say big block of games. We hope it's a big block of games, but the reality is it could be all over quite quickly as well. So we just need to make sure we get everything right on those days. This week, obviously, there's a little bit more margin for error, but we still want to get a performance, and all the individuals want to go out and perform well themselves to put themselves in the best position to get selected for the big games that are coming up.
And very finally for me, Leo, just in terms of somebody who's hoping to make a senior debut from the bench this week, Tom Clarkson, what have you made of him, I suppose, coming up through the academy?
He's gone well with the 20s for the last couple of seasons. 20s were obviously unlucky, like the way it got cut short at the end of last season. So Tom, he's come in and trained with us during the summer, acquitted himself really well, and it's a great step for him, great opportunity, and hopefully it'll be a good day for him.
Thanks, Leo.
I was just wondering there in terms of, after the Ulster game this weekend, you're into 3 weeks of knockout rugby. It's exciting, but it also is quite pressurising, and to be in 3 semi-final final and then into the Heineken's Cup. How much do you relish that, or do you find it pressure?
There's pressure for sure, but that's what we all do to be involved in these games. The odd thing is, even though it's the end of the season, there's certain parts of it feels like it's the start of the season. So but this is what it's all about, really, isn't it? Like, to get to these big days, we'd love to have supporters there with us at the ground, because they make the big days extra special. You've seen some of the footage during lockdown of different finals and semi-finals and whatever else, and the occasions are made extra special by the supporters. The players, they'll do their best to put on a big show. I think you saw that at the weekend in our Munster game. 2 sets of players fully committed, going hard at it, on occasion right to the end. But when the final whistle blew, it was still very strange when you're in the stadium, and it's there's still a deathly silence, really, like all the way through. So a bit of noise from maybe the bench, and that's about it. Hopefully it won't be long. I see there's a few different trials going on in terms of getting supporters back to the ground, and it's certainly something that we miss greatly. But the pressure, what you talk about in terms of your question, it's a great pressure though as well. Like, these are the games we want to be involved in, but it's making sure we get all the little bits right. The devil is in the detail in many ways, but we need to get all the little bits right in terms of our preparation, because we know, the better prepared we are, generally the better we will perform in the days. So the better we perform, the better chance we have of getting the positive outcome that we want. So it's important we wind the steps back. But it comes around quickly, because, as I said in one of the earlier questions, about there's lots of things we need to fix from last weekend. So even though some of these guys that are playing this weekend didn't play last weekend, they've seen the images, they've seen some of the learnings that are there. It's whether they can put that into practice themselves now on their first attempt. So and that's the complication with just having 2, regular season games, that are, I suppose, the not must-win games, because next week we're into a must-win game if we want to be involved in the final the week after.